The night my parents handed my brother the company I spent 6 years building, I didn't scream. I didn't flip a single wine glass. I just smiled, folded my napkin, and said I needed some air. Nobody followed me outside. That probably tells you everything you need to know about my family. My name is not important right now. What matters is this. I am 31 years old. I have a daughter named Sophie who just turned 8. And for the last 6 years, I have been the silent engine behind a logistics software company that my father started but never knew how to run. I wrote the code. I built the client relationships. I stayed on calls until 2 in the morning when the servers crashed, and my brother Nathan was somewhere in Cabo posting photos of himself on a boat. Nathan is 35. He has a business degree from a mid-tier school he never lets anyone forget. A beautiful wife named Cassandra who calls me on in a way that makes my skin crawl, and 2 sons my parents refer to as the future of this family. Their names are Bryce and Connor. They are 7 and 5. They have done nothing except exist, which apparently is enough to be the future of something. My daughter Sophie has existed for 8 years. She has also learned to read, taught herself 3 chords on guitar, and last spring placed second in her school's regional science fair. According to my parents, she is such a sweet girl. That's it. That's the whole sentence. No future attached to it. I noticed this for years. I filed it somewhere behind my sternum and kept working. The anniversary dinner was my mother's idea. 40 years of marriage, a private room at Harrington's downtown, the kind of place where the bread costs $12 and comes on a slate tile. My father wore his good blazer. My mother wore the pearl earrings she saves for occasions where she wants people to know she has pearl earrings. I brought Sophie. I wore a green dress I bought specifically for this because I wanted to feel good. I wanted one night where I sat at that table and felt like I belonged there the same way Nathan does, effortlessly, without having done anything particular to earn it. We were halfway through the appetizers when my father stood up and tapped his knife against his glass. 40 years, he said, and looked at my mother in a way that was genuinely sweet, and for a moment I forgot to brace myself. He talked about legacy. He talked about what it means to build something and then hand it to people who will carry it forward. He talked about the company, our company, the one I had given the better part of my 20s to, and how proud he was of where it had come. Then he looked at Nathan. This family has always known who its leaders are, he said, and I want to make it official tonight. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, a real envelope, cream-colored, like a wedding invitation. He slid it across the table to Nathan. I watched Nathan open it. I watched his face do the thing it does when he gets what he wants, a slow, spreading satisfaction, like a cat in a patch of sun. It was a transfer of shares, controlling interest, effective the first of the month. I sat very still. My mother reached over and squeezed Nathan's arm. Cassandra made a small sound of delight. Bryce and Connor kept eating their bread, unbothered as children should be at a dinner they do not understand. Sophie looked at me. She is 8, and she already knows how to read a room. I gave her a small smile and reached over and straightened the collar of her dress. My father looked at me then, and I genuinely think he expected me to smile and raise my glass. Claire, he said, you'll always be the backbone of this place. We couldn't do it without you. The backbone. Not the architect. Not the person who had rewritten the entire back-end infrastructure 18 months ago when the original system was hemorrhaging data. Not the person you had personally flown to meet the Ashford Group when we almost lost the contract that accounts for 30% of our revenue. The backbone. The thing that holds the body up, but that nobody thinks about until it breaks. I said, "Thank you, Dad." I excused myself to get some air. Outside, the city was doing its regular Thursday night things. Cabs, couples, someone walking a very small dog. I stood on the sidewalk in my green dress and I breathed. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Thanks for always being such a team player, sis. Means a lot." I put the phone in my clutch. I went back inside. I ate my salmon. I watched my father cut his steak and laugh at his own joke about the stock market. I watched Cassandra tell my mother that Bryce had been showing real leadership qualities lately. At age 7, presumably by telling Connor what to do with his Legos. When Sophie tugged my sleeve and whispered that she was tired, I said, "Me too, baby. Me too." We said our goodbyes. My mother hugged me and said, "Drive safe." My father patted my shoulder. Nathan gave me a look that I can only describe as magnanimous, the look of someone who has just won and is being gracious about it. I drove home. I put Sophie to bed. I read her 2 pages of the book we've been working through together, the one about the girl who discovers she can talk to rivers, and when her breathing went slow and even, I closed the book and sat in the dark of her room for a few minutes. Then I went to my home office and I opened my laptop. Here is something nobody in my family knows about me. 6 months ago, when I started to sense which way the wind was blowing, I had a conversation with our company's legal counsel, a woman named Joanna, who I have trusted for 4 years and who has the best poker face of anyone I have ever met. I asked her some questions. She answered them. I made some decisions quietly and carefully, the way I do everything. The most important decision was this. I had spent 6 years building a client management system, proprietary software, custom designed, deeply integrated into everything the company does. Every contract, every client profile, every automated report that goes out to our 43 active accounts. I had built it. My name was on the original development agreement, which predated Nathan's involvement by 3 years. Joanna had been very calm when she explained what that meant. The development agreement gives you intellectual property rights over the core architecture, she said. The company licenses it from you. That license has renewal terms. The renewal was coming up in 11 days. I had not said anything about it to anyone. I had been waiting to see what my father would do. Now I knew. I opened the licensing agreement file. I read through it one more time, even though I had it nearly memorized. Then I opened a new email and I began to type. The email was to Joanna. It said, "Let's move forward with what we discussed. Please send a non-renewal notice first thing tomorrow." I sent it. I closed my laptop. I went to the kitchen, made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and sat at the counter in the quiet of my house, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not even satisfaction, not yet. Just a strange, clean calm. The kind you get when you have finally stopped waiting for something and started doing something instead. The next morning, I dropped Sophie at school, came home, and called Joanna. "It's done," she said. The notice went out at 8. They have 30 days to negotiate a new licensing agreement or migrate off the system entirely. And if they want to negotiate, then they negotiate with you. On your terms. I said thank you and hung up. My phone rang 11 minutes later. It was my father. I let it ring. It rang again. I let it ring again. The third time I picked up. Claire. His voice had a quality I didn't recognize at first. Then I placed it. He was frightened. My father, who had handed my life's work to my brother over salmon and slate tile bread, was frightened. "We got a notice from Joanna this morning about the licensing." "What is this?" "It's a non-renewal notice, Dad. The licensing agreement on the client management system expires in 30 days. I'm not renewing under the current terms." Silence. "I don't understand," he said. "That system is part of the company. The company licenses it from me. It always has. It's in the original development agreement which you signed. I can send you a copy if you'd like." More silence. Longer this time. "Claire, you can't just... This affects everything. The Ashford Group, the quarterly reports, everything runs through that system." "I know," I said. "I built it." I heard him exhale. Then, in a different voice, smaller, careful, "What do you want?" And here is the thing about that question. It is the first time in 31 years that my father has asked me what I want. Not what I think, not what I recommend, not whether I can handle something or cover for something or stay late for something. What I want. I had thought about this. I had thought about it carefully, the way I do. "I want equity," I said. "Real equity. Not a title, not a bonus structure. A 35% stake, documented and filed, with a seat on the board. I want my name on this company the way my work has always been in it. Claire, And I want Sophie's college fund reinstated. You pulled it 2 years ago and put it in a family investment account that I have never been given access to. I want it separated and put back in her name. I heard his breathing. If those two things happen, I said, I'll renew the license. And I'll keep doing what I've always done, which is make sure this company actually works. Another long silence. Then, I need to talk to your mother. Take your time, I said. You have 30 days. He called back that afternoon. He said yes. I want to be careful here because some people will read this and think the story ended there, with my father saying yes, with a clean resolution, like the last page of a chapter. It didn't, quite. There were 2 weeks of tense family group texts. Cassandra sent me a long message that began with, I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I did not respond to it. Nathan called me and said I had blindsided him, and I said, genuinely and without sarcasm, I know exactly how that feels. He didn't have an answer for that. The equity transfer took 3 weeks to document properly. Joanna handled it. The day it was finalized, she sent me a 1-line text. Done. Congratulations. I was in the school pickup line when I got it. Sophie climbed into the back seat with her backpack and her water bottle and a drawing she'd made in art class. A house with a big tree and a figure with brown hair she told me was me. Can we get frozen yogurt? She asked. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. We got frozen yogurt. She got strawberry with gummy bears. I got mango, and she immediately stole half of it, which is the correct way to eat frozen yogurt with your kid. I didn't tell her what had happened. She's 8. What I did tell her, sitting at the little plastic table outside the yogurt place while the afternoon went gold around us, was this. You know how you worked on that science project for 3 months and you got second place and you were a little disappointed? She nodded. Do you remember what you said to me after? She thought about it. I said I was going to do it again next year and I was going to get first. That's right, I said. She looked at me. Mom, why are you crying? I laughed. I'm not crying. I'm allergic to gummy bears. She gave me the look that 8-year-olds give you when they are too smart for the lie you just told. Then she pushed her cup toward me and let me have the last few bites. Some people in my family still don't quite understand what happened. My mother called it a business disagreement that got resolved. My Aunt Helen, who heard about it through the family grapevine, sent me a card that said, so proud of you for speaking up, as though I'd raised my hand in the meeting. Nathan and I are functional. We are at the same table for family things. We are professional in work contexts. Whether we will ever be close again is a question I have stopped spending energy on. I have 35% of a company I built, a daughter who wants to win next year's science fair, and a licensing agreement that is now very clearly in my name. My father and I had dinner last month, just the two of us, for the first time I can remember. He ordered the salmon, which felt circular. Halfway through, he put his fork down and looked at me and said, I should have seen it sooner. What you were doing, what you were worth. I wanted to say something sharp. I had something sharp ready, but I looked at him, really looked at him, an old man in his good blazer trying to find the right words, and I let it go. You see it now? I said. He nodded. He picked his fork back up. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't the conversation I spent years imagining we'd have, but it was real, and it was ours. And sometimes that's what you get, and it has to be enough. The other night, Sophie came into my office while I was finishing up some reports. She sat on the little chair in the corner, the green velvet one she has claimed as hers, and did her homework while I worked. We didn't talk much, just the two of us in the lamplight, working. At some point, she said without looking up from her worksheet, Mom, are we going to be okay? I looked at her. Yeah, baby, I said. We really are. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her math. I went back to mine. I've thought a lot about what actually happened that night at Harrington's. Not the legal part. I understood that clearly from the beginning. I mean the human part. The part where my father stood up in his good blazer and looked right past 6 years of my work and saw only Nathan sitting there, waiting to receive it. For a long time, I told myself that people like my father don't know what they're doing when they do things like that it's blindness, not cruelty. And maybe that's true. But I've stopped using that as a reason to absorb it quietly. Here's what I've come to understand. The way you get treated in a room is almost always a reflection of what you've allowed over time in smaller rooms. I allowed a lot. I covered for Nathan when his timeline slipped. I didn't make noise about the Sophie situation with the college fund because I didn't want to create conflict at Christmas. I stayed on calls until 2 in the morning and then didn't mention it the next day because I didn't want to seem like I was keeping score. I thought that good work would eventually be seen. I thought patience was the same thing as wisdom. It isn't. Patience is just patience. Wisdom is knowing when patience has become something else, something quieter and sadder, something that starts to look like resignation if you're not careful. What I did with the licensing agreement wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that, because I know how it sounds from the outside. It was the first time I had ever used what I actually had. That's all. I had built something real and I finally stopped pretending I hadn't built it. The moment I sent that email to Joanna, the thing that changed wasn't my circumstances, it was me. I stopped waiting for my father to assign me the value I had already earned. Sophie doesn't know all the details of what happened. She's 8. And 8-year-olds should be focused on science fairs and guitar chords and which flavor of frozen yogurt to steal from their mother. But I think about the version of her that will be 25 someday, 30, sitting in her own rooms making her own calculations about what she's worth and what she's willing to accept. I want her to watch how I moved through this. Not the anger. I don't want her to inherit my anger, but the patience to wait until I understood the situation and then the clarity to act on what I knew. That's the thing nobody tells you about self-respect. It doesn't feel like a grand gesture when it finally arrives. It felt like a Tuesday morning, a cup of tea, a laptop open on my kitchen counter. It felt like sending one email and then going to bed. My father said he should have seen it sooner. I believe him. And I also know now that I was the one responsible for making it impossible to miss. Not by being louder, not by being harder, but by finally stopping the habit of making myself easy to overlook. Nathan and I are still at the same table for family things. That's real and it's enough. Some things don't wrap up cleanly, and I've stopped needing them to. What I have is a 35% stake in something I built, a daughter who knows her mother doesn't fold, and a very clear sense of what I will and won't accept going forward. That clarity cost me a lot of years. I don't say that with bitterness anymore, mostly just with the kind of honesty that comes from sitting in the lamplight with your kid while she does her homework and thinking, this is the life, messy and real and fully mine.